Really woke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. He was back in the village, bathed in the soft light of the morning sun. Sweat drenched his brow, and his hands shook as he sat up. The vision, the nightmare, had felt so real. For a moment, he wondered if it was more than just a dream. Had the harbinger truly come? Was the darkness already here? Aduni's words echoed in his mind. Something is coming. He knew now that the battle he faced was far greater than anything he had ever imagined. The harbinger was not just a spirit, but a force of destruction, and it was coming for everything. Really stood up, his resolve hardening. He had to act. There was no time to waste. The morning after his vision, Really knew that the path ahead was no longer just about defending the village. The harbinger, a force of pure destruction, was coming. And it would take more than just his light to defeat such an enemy. If he was to stand any chance of saving the world from this darkness, he would need allies, strong, determined people who could stand with him in this coming storm. He wasted no time. The villagers, though still rebuilding and recovering from the horrors they had endured, were beginning to sense the urgency in his eyes. Really approached Aduni first. Her wisdom and connection to the village had already proven invaluable, and he knew she would be a key part of the coming battle. Aduni, Really began, his voice serious, I need your help. The darkness I saw, it's real. And we have to act fast. I need to gather others, people who can help us. But we can't do this alone. Aduni's face hardened with determination. She had seen the toll the spirit had taken on the village, and she had no intention of allowing this new force of darkness to claim their world. I will stand with you, Really. You've already done so much for us. We will fight by your side. Really smiled, grateful for her support. We will need more than just the village. We need to gather other allies from across the land. There are powerful forces out there, guardians, warriors, healer, people who understand the balance between light and dark. I need to reach out to them. Aduni nodded. I know a few people who might help. Some of the older, wiser ones from nearby villages. But you may also want to speak with the keepers of the sacred forest. They are strong, and their magic could be crucial in facing this threat. Really's mind raced. The keepers of the sacred forest were known to be powerful beings who lived in harmony with nature. Their ability to tap into the earth's magic was something Really knew could make a difference. But reaching them would not be easy. The forest was vast and filled with dangers, creatures that only came out during the night and ancient traps that could turn even the bravest adventurer back. We leave at dawn, Really said, his voice firm. We'll start with the keepers. If they will join us, we'll move on to the other villages. We can't waste time. The following day, Really, Aduni, and a small group of villagers set out toward the sacred forest. The journey was long, but the villagers felt a renewed sense of purpose. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, the air around them seemed to grow heavier, the trees taller, their trunks gnarled and ancient. It felt as though the forest was alive, watching them with every step they took. Really led the group, his senses heightened. He had learned to trust the whispers of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, and the subtle changes in the temperature of the air. He knew the forest was more than just a place of trees, it was a living, breathing entity. And if the keepers still resided there, he would find them. Aduni spoke quietly, keeping pace with Really. The keepers are not like ordinary villagers, she explained. They are protectors of the ancient magic that flows through this land. They have the ability to tap into the essence of life itself. If anyone can help us against the harbinger, it is them. Really nodded. He had heard the legends of the keepers, but had never met them. They were said to be both wise and powerful, their magic woven into the very fabric of the forest. If he was to defeat the harbinger, he would need every bit of that power. As they pressed on, the forest grew denser, the path winding between towering trees whose branches seemed to close in above them. The silence was thick, broken only by the occasional bird call or rustle in the underbrush. The deeper they went, the more Really felt as though they were being drawn into something ancient and timeless. Suddenly, they came upon a clearing. In the center stood a massive tree, its bark dark and smooth, with roots that sprawled out like veins across the ground. At the base of the tree sat a figure, draped in a cloak made of leaves and vines. The figure's face was hidden, but Really could feel its presence. The power emanating from it was undeniable. Really stepped forward, his voice respectful. We seek the help of the keepers. We are in need of your strength. A great darkness is rising, and we cannot face it alone. The figure's head tilted slightly, as if considering Really's words. Then, without a word, it rose from its seat and stepped toward them. As the figure moved, the cloak of leaves and vines shifted, revealing the face of an older woman, her skin marked by the passage of time and the touch of the forest itself. Her eyes were a deep green, like the heart of the forest, and her gaze seemed to pierce through Really. You have come to ask for our aid. The woman's voice was low and melodic, carrying the weight of centuries. But you do not yet understand the cost of what you seek. Really nodded, his resolve unwavering. I understand that the darkness we face is unlike anything we have ever known. But I believe that with your help, we can defeat it. The woman's eyes softened, and she looked over the group. The balance of nature has been disturbed. The harbinger you speak of is not just an enemy, it is a force that threatens to unravel the very fabric of life. To fight it, you must be willing to sacrifice more than you have ever known. It will not be easy, and the path will be fraught with peril. Really stepped closer, his voice firm. I am ready. We are all ready. The woman studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. Very well. The keepers will aid you. But know this. The forest's magic is not free. It requires a price, a bond that ties you to the land and its spirit. Are you willing to pay it? Really did not hesitate. Yes. Whatever it takes. The woman extended her hand, and as she did, the ground beneath them seemed to pulse with life. Then it is done. The magic of the forest is now yours. But remember, Really, this power is not just a tool, it is a responsibility. Use it wisely. As her words settled in the air, the forest seemed to come alive around them. The trees rustled as though in response, and a strange energy flowed through Really. He could feel it, an ancient magic that was now a part of him. He had made a pact with the forest, and its power would guide him in the battle to complete. The group spent the night in the forest, resting and preparing for the journey ahead. Really's mind was heavy with the weight of the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. The keepers had given him their power, but they had also given him a warning. The darkness they were about to face would not be defeated easily. As the night wore on, Really stood by the edge of the clearing, staring into the heart of the forest. The whispers of the trees seemed to call to him, urging him forward. He knew that the path ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but he was no longer afraid. The harbinger was coming, and this time, Really would be ready. After receiving the ancient magic of the sacred forest, Really felt stronger and more connected to the earth than ever before. The forest's power hummed within him, and he could feel the subtle pulse of the world's heartbeat, alive, vibrant, and constantly shifting. But despite the strength he now possessed, the weight of the looming battle with the harbinger hung heavily over him. He knew that even the magic of the forest would not be enough to face the darkness alone. We need more help, Really said to Adunni, his voice determined but tinged with urgency. The harbinger is not something any one group can defeat. We must gather more allies, stronger warriors, skilled healers, and wise leaders. There are villages beyond this forest, people who might be willing to join us. We must go to them. Adunni, who had already seen the power of the forest magic, agreed. The neighboring villages are strong, but they will need convincing. They've heard of the darkness, but many of them still believe it is nothing more than superstition. We must show them the truth. With a deep sense of purpose, Really, Adunni, and the small group of villagers who had accompanied them from their village began their journey toward the first of the neighboring villages. The road ahead was long and dangerous, but they were no longer traveling blindly. The bond between them had been solidified in the forest, and they were united by their mission to stop the harbinger and save the world. As they traveled, the group encountered many challenges. The path through the mountains was treacherous, filled with jagged rocks, deep ravines, and wild animals that seemed to sense their presence long before they arrived. Yet, with Really's newfound connection to the earth, the forest's magic guided them, making the path less difficult than it should have been. Along the way, they met other travelers, some friendly, others not so much. In one village, they encountered a band of thieves who tried to ambush them under the cover of darkness. But really, empowered by the magic of the forest, easily overpowered the attackers, sending them fleeing into the night. Despite the challenges, the journey was also a time of learning. Adani shared stories about the other villages, each one unique, with its own customs, strengths, and weaknesses. Really listened intently, knowing that he needed to understand these people if he was to gain their trust and convince them to join the fight against the Harbinger. It was not until several days later that they finally reached the first village, a small, isolated settlement nestled between rolling hills. The village was known for its strong warriors, who had defended their land against many threats in the past. But would they be willing to fight for a cause that seemed so distant to them? Really stood at the edge of the village, looking out over the land. The village was quiet, its people going about their daily routines. But there was an underlying tension in the air, a sense that something was about to change. We have to convince them, Really said, turning to Adani. We need to show them that this isn't just a threat to us, it's a threat to everyone. Adani nodded. I'll speak to the leaders. They'll listen to me. But you must be prepared to show them the truth. If they see the power you carry, they may understand why this fight is worth joining. Together, Really and Adani entered the village, making their way toward the center where the village elders met. The warriors of the village watched them closely, their eyes wary and calculating. They knew the world was changing, but they did not yet understand the scope of the danger. When they reached the elders' council, Really spoke first, his voice steady and commanding. I come to you with a warning. A darkness is coming, a force unlike anything we have ever faced. It will destroy everything in its path, and unless we unite, we will not survive. The elders exchanged glances, skepticism clear on their faces. One of the older warriors, his gray beard thick with age, spoke. We've heard stories, but these are just tales told by old women around the fire. What makes you think this is real? Really stepped forward, his eyes glowing with the power of the forest. I have seen it with my own eyes. I have felt the power of the Harbinger, a force so strong, it threatens to undo the very fabric of the world. I have the magic of the forest to guide me, but I cannot do this alone. I need your strength. The air in the room shifted. The elders exchanged uncertain looks, but one of them, an older woman with eyes sharp as daggers, stood up. If what you say is true, then we have no choice but to fight. The protection of our people is paramount. But we cannot simply follow you because of your words. You must prove your strength. Really nodded. He understood the challenge. The village needed to see for themselves the power that he wielded. Without hesitation, he extended his hand, and the earth beneath his feet responded. The ground trembled slightly as vines sprouted from the soil, twisting around his arm and extending into the air, their green tendrils pulsing with life. The warriors gasped, their hands going instinctively to their weapons. But Really's voice was calm. This is the magic of the forest. It is real, and it is the key to defeating the darkness. The elder woman studied him closely, her gaze unwavering. After a long silence, she nodded. You have proven your strength. We will stand with you. But be warned, our warriors are not easily led. We fight when we believe in the cause, and we fight with all that we have. Really bowed his head in gratitude. Thank you. I will not fail you. The next morning, the village warriors gathered, ready for battle. With their aid, Really and Adani continued their journey, traveling from village to village, spreading the word of the darkness and convincing those they met to join the fight. Each village was different. Some were quick to offer their support, while others took more convincing. But with each new ally, Really's confidence grew. They came across villages with legendary healers, warriors with unmatched skill in combat, and wise leaders who had fought in wars long before Really was born. Together, they formed a small army, united under the banner of defeating the Harbinger. Really knew that they were not ready yet. The battle ahead would be long and grueling, and there was still so much more to learn. But with each new ally, he felt the strength of their united front, and he knew that this was only the beginning of the fight to save their world. Really stood atop a hill overlooking the growing camp of warriors and allies. The once quiet valley had been transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Tents were pitched along the slopes, warriors sharpened their weapons, and healers worked tirelessly, preparing potions and salves for the battle that was sure to come. Every day, more people arrived, villagers from across the land, each carrying their own stories of loss, fear, and determination. But despite the flurry of activity, Riley's heart remained heavy. The Harbinger was coming, and no matter how many allies he gathered, no matter how much strength he had drawn from the forest, the battle would not be easy. The darkness that awaited them was unlike anything they had ever faced. It would require more than just strength and courage, it would require sacrifice. Adunni, who had been busy organizing the healers, walked up to him, her expression somber. The people are ready, really. But I can see it in their eyes, they're scared. They've heard the stories. They know what's at stake. Riley turned to face her, his gaze unwavering. I know. I can feel it, too. But they're here because they believe in this cause. They believe in the light we carry. And that's what we have to hold on to. It's our only hope. Adunni nodded, her eyes reflecting the weight of their responsibility. I just hope it's enough. Over the next few days, Riley and his allies prepared in every way they could. The warriors trained tirelessly, honing their skills in combat, while the healers worked around the clock, creating medicines and charms to protect the fighters from the dark magic the Harbinger wielded. Riley spent his time meditating, drawing on the forest's power and seeking guidance from the spirits that had long inhabited the land. He knew that to face the Harbinger, he would need every ounce of strength and wisdom he could summon. Late one evening, as the sun set behind the hills and the camp settled into a quiet rhythm, Riley stood by the campfire, his mind distant. A figure approached him, casting a long shadow in the firelight. It was the elder woman from the village of warriors, the one who had agreed to join their cause. She was old, her skin weathered by time, but her eyes held the sharpness of a lifetime of experience. Riley, she called, her voice low but clear. I've been watching you. And I sense that you carry more than just the magic of the forest. You've seen the darkness, haven't you? You've felt it growing inside you, just as I have. Riley turned to face her, surprised by her insight. Yes. It's like a storm gathering on the horizon. I can feel it getting closer every day. The elder woman nodded gravely. It is not just the Harbinger that threatens this world. There is something else, something ancient and deeply rooted in the very essence of this land. The darkness you feel is not just a force of destruction. It is a reflection of something darker within us all. Riley frowned, struggling to understand. What do you mean? The Harbinger is a force of pure evil. It must be stopped. The elder woman's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. The Harbinger is a manifestation of fear and hatred, forces that have always existed within humanity. It is not the darkness itself that will destroy us, but our inability to confront it. If we do not face our own fears, our own weaknesses, we will never defeat it. You must understand that the greatest battle is not against the Harbinger. It is against the darkness inside yourself. Riley felt a shiver run down his spine. The words of the elder woman resonated deep within him. He had always believed that the fight was external, that the battle was simply against the evil force threatening their world. But now, he realized that the true battle lay within. The Harbinger was not just a villain, it was a reflection of the fear, hatred, and doubt that lived in every heart. And if they were to defeat it, they would first need to confront those shadows within themselves. He met the elder's gaze, determination flashing in his eyes. I will face it. I will face whatever darkness lies within me. And I will defeat it. The elder nodded, her face filled with quiet approval. That is the first step, really. Remember, the strength you seek is not just in the magic or the warriors you gather. It is in your own heart. Trust in it, and you will find the courage to defeat the darkness. The days leading up to the final battle were a blur of preparations. The warriors fortified their camp, setting up defenses and watchtowers. The healers finished their potions and charms, and the children of the village were given simple but crucial tasks, carrying messages, tending to the wounded, and preparing for the inevitable. Riley's heart was heavy, but his resolve was unshakable. Finally, the day arrived. The sky was overcast, the sun hidden behind thick clouds. The air was thick with tension, and the villagers moved quietly, as if they knew that this day would change everything. Really stood before them, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spoken to them many times over the past few days, giving them hope, rallying them to fight. But now, as he looked out at their faces, he knew that words alone would not be enough. They were ready for battle, but would they be ready for the darkness that lay ahead? Adunni stepped forward, her face resolute. We will not let fear control us. The darkness is strong, but our light is stronger. We fight for our homes, for our families, and for the future. We fight for the light that still burns within us all. Her words were met with a chorus of cheers. The warriors stood tall, their weapons gleaming in the dull light. The healers stood at the ready, their potions and charms strapped to their bodies. And really, his heart now filled with the strength of the forest and the wisdom of the elders, raised his hand. The time has come, he said. We will face the Harbinger together. And we will win. The army moved out in unison, marching toward the distant mountains where the Harbinger's forces were said to be gathering. The path was long and treacherous, but with each step, really felt the power of the forest grow within him. The wind seemed to whisper its support, and the ground beneath his feet hummed with life. He could feel the presence of his allies, each of them bringing their strength to the fight. As they approached the foot of the mountains, really felt a shiver run down his spine. The air had changed. It was heavier now, thick with an unnatural chill. The earth itself seemed to tremble, as if aware of the coming battle. And then, from the darkness ahead, they heard it. A low, guttural sound, like the growl of some great beast, echoed through the mountains. It was the Harbinger, its presence as if they knew that this day would change everything. Really stood before them, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spoken to them many times over the past few days, giving them hope, rallying them to fight. But now, as he looked out at their faces, he knew that words alone would not be enough. They were ready for battle, but would they be ready for the darkness that lay ahead? Adunni stepped forward, her face resolute. We will not let fear control us. The darkness is strong, but our light is stronger. We fight for our homes, for our families, and for the future. We fight for the light that still burns within us all. Her words were met with a chorus of cheers. The warriors stood tall, their weapons gleaming in the dull light. The healers stood at the ready, their potions and charms strapped to their bodies. And really, his heart now filled with the strength of the forest and the wisdom of the elders, raised his hand. The time has come, he said. We will face the Harbinger together. And we will win. The army moved out in unison, marching toward the distant mountains where the Harbinger's forces were said to be gathering. The path was long and treacherous, but with each step, really felt the power of the forest grow within him. The wind seemed to whisper its support, and the ground beneath his feet hummed with life. He could feel the presence of his allies, each of them bringing their strength to the fight. As they approached the foot of the mountains, really felt a shiver run down his spine. The air had changed. It was heavier now, thick with an unnatural chill. The earth itself seemed to tremble, as if aware of the coming battle. And then, from the darkness ahead, they heard it. A low, guttural sound, like the growl of some great beast, echoed through the mountains. It was the Harbinger, its presence undeniable. Really raised his sword, his heart steady but his mind racing. This was it. The final confrontation. The moment that would determine the fate of the world. He turned to his allies, his voice ringing with determination. Stay together. We fight as one. For the light. For the future. And with that, they entered the darkness. Undeniable. Really raised his sword, his heart steady but his mind racing. This was it. The final confrontation. The moment that would determine the fate of the world. He turned to his allies, his voice ringing with determination. Stay together. We fight as one. For the light. For the future. And with that, they entered the darkness. The mountain path was narrow and covered in thick mist. Really led the way, his eyes focused ahead. Behind him, warriors marched silently, their weapons tight in their hands. The healers followed closely, ready to help anyone who fell. No one spoke. The only sounds were the crunching of their footsteps and the distant, eerie howls that echoed from deep within the mountain. As they climbed higher, the mist grew darker, like it had life of its own. It wrapped around them, cold and heavy. Even the birds had gone silent. The forest they left behind seemed like a different world now. This place was cursed. Really could feel it in his bones. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed across the mountain. It was loud and twisted, like someone laughing inside your own head. Welcome, brave ones, the voice mocked. You've come far. Only to die. Really stopped. He looked around. The warriors formed a circle, weapons raised, ready for anything. Adani moved beside him, clutching a charm close to her chest. It's her, she whispered. The woman. The one who became the harbinger. Really nodded. He stepped forward and shouted into the darkness, "We are not afraid of you. You have brought fear, pain, and death. But today, that ends. We have come to stop you." For a moment, there was silence. Then the ground shook. It started as a low rumble, then turned into a full quake. Rocks tumbled down the cliffs. Trees cracked and fell. The warriors stumbled, struggling to keep their balance. From the mist, shadowy figures appeared. Not one, not two, but hundreds. They were the Harbinger's army. They didn't look like normal people. Their eyes glowed red, their bodies twisted by dark magic. Some had horns, others had sharp claws. Some crawled like animals, others flew above the trees. They screamed and growled as they charged. Hold the line, really shouted. Defend each other. The battle began. Swords clashed. Arrows flew. The sky turned black as the creatures swarmed down like a flood. Really fought with all his strength. His sword, blessed by the forest, shone brightly in the dark. Every swing cut through shadows. Every movement brought light to the darkness. Adani stood behind him, casting protection charms and healing wounds. She glowed with spiritual power. Whenever she raised her hands, light shot out, burning the dark creatures. But for every enemy they defeated, two more came. Still, the warriors did not give up. Push forward, really shouted. The army moved slowly through the chaos, pushing toward the heart of the mountain. That was where the Harbinger waited. Really knew it. He could feel her power drawing them in like a magnet. As they reached a large clearing surrounded by dead trees, everything went silent. The air grew cold. The wind stopped. The creatures paused, stepping back. The ground cracked open, and from it rose a woman, not just any woman. She was the old woman. But she didn't look old anymore. Her face was smooth but pale like ash, her eyes black with no whites. Her hair floated like smoke. She wore a long black robe that moved like it was alive. Around her floated skulls and bones of those she had sacrificed. Shadows danced behind her like ghosts. Really, she said, her voice deep and angry. You dare challenge me? Really stepped forward, sword in hand. You were once one of us. You were innocent. But you let vengeance turn you into this. She screamed. The trees around her burst into flames. They took everything from me. They used me like I was nothing. Now I am power itself. You were wronged, yes, really said calmly. But hurting others won't heal your pain. You turned your back on the light. She raised her hand, and a dark wind shot out. Really was thrown backward. The warriors tried to run to him, but shadow beasts blocked their way. The Harbinger rose into the air, dark clouds swirling above her. Thunder roared. Lightning flashed. I will finish what I started. She screamed. I will turn this land into a graveyard. Really stood slowly, bruised but not broken. He looked at the sky, whispered a prayer, and then pointed his sword toward her. You're not the only one with power. He closed his eyes, and the forest answered. From the trees and ground, golden lights rose. Leaves shimmered. The wind returned, blowing softly at first, then growing strong. The sky began to clear. The stars blinked back into view. The earth itself fought for Really. Behind him, the warriors and healers felt it too. A wave of hope passed through them. They pushed forward with new strength, cutting through the creatures, holding the line. Adani chanted louder, her hands glowing brighter than ever. Really charged forward. The final duel had begun. Really ran forward with all his strength. The golden light around him grew brighter with every step. His sword blazed like the sun, cutting through the heavy darkness around the Harbinger. The earth trembled beneath his feet, and even the air crackled with power. The Harbinger lifted both hands, and the shadows obeyed. They shot out like snakes, twisting and flying toward Reilly. But the light from his sword burned them to ash before they could touch him. You will never win. She screamed, her voice echoing like thunder. You fight against power that is older than time. Reilly's voice was calm, strong. I fight with the power of truth. The power of light. The power of God. She screamed louder, summoning a massive black cloud above her head. It formed into a giant face, twisted, angry, full of hatred. It opened its mouth and roared, sending a wave of darkness toward Reilly and his army. Behind him, the warriors braced themselves. Adani stepped forward, raising her hands toward the sky. "O Lord," she cried, "send us your strength." Suddenly, a beam of light came down from the heavens. It hit the ground right between Reilly and the Harbinger. The darkness split in two. The face in the cloud disappeared. The wind howled loudly, then stopped. Everyone froze. The Harbinger stared at the light, confused. "What is this?" "It's the power of God," Adani answered. "And you cannot fight it." Reilly took that moment. He stepped into the beam of light, his sword now fully glowing like fire. He ran again, faster than before. The Harbinger raised her hands to strike him down, but her power was weakening. The beam of light was draining her strength. She screamed and sent a final wave of darkness toward him. But Reilly jumped into the air, over the shadow wave, and with one mighty cry, he swung his sword down. The blade hit her chest. A huge explosion of light and wind burst from the impact. It spread in every direction, shaking the mountains and pushing back every creature of darkness. The Harbinger cried out, not in rage this time, but in pain. Real pain. She looked down at her chest, where the sword had struck. Light was pouring out of her body like fire from a cracked pot. No, she whispered. "This can't be happening." Reilly stepped back, breathing hard. "It's over." The Harbinger dropped to her knees. Her black robe began to melt away. The skulls around her turned to dust. The shadows behind her vanished. She looked up at the sky, and for the first time, her eyes changed. They were not black anymore. They were tired. Human. "I was just a woman," she said weakly. "I only wanted to be heard." Then her body faded into light, soft and white like smoke rising to the sky. And she was gone. Silence. The mountain grew still. The wind returned. The birds chirped again. The creatures of darkness had all vanished. The battle was over. Reilly dropped to his knees, exhausted. Adani ran to him, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she said. "No," Reilly replied. "We did it. God did it." The warriors looked around. Many were hurt, some had fallen, but they were alive. And the evil that had plagued their land for so long was gone. They stayed there on the mountain until the first light of dawn broke through the clouds. It was the most beautiful sunrise anyone had ever seen. The light washed over the land like a warm blanket, touching every village, every home. Back in the village, the people began to come out. They could feel the difference in the air. The heaviness was gone. The fear had lifted. Children laughed. Women danced. Men cried tears of joy. The curse had been broken. The sun rose slowly over the land of Yoruba, casting golden light over hills and trees, rivers and rooftops. But this sunrise was different. It was peaceful. It was warm. It felt like the land itself was smiling again. Reilly, Adani, and the remaining warriors walked down from the mountain. Their clothes were torn, their bodies bruised, but their spirits were strong. Villagers were waiting for them at the edge of the forest. When they saw them coming, people ran forward, crying, singing, and shouting for joy. "They have returned." Someone screamed. "God has given us victory." Another cried. Children ran to hug the warriors. Mothers knelt and thanked the heavens. Even the elders, who had once doubted Reilly and Adani, came forward in silence and bowed their heads in respect. One old man said, "We were wrong to turn away. May our hearts never be blind again." The king, wearing white robes, came out of the palace, holding a staff of peace. His eyes were filled with tears. He walked to Reilly and knelt before him. "My son," he said, "you were the light when all of us were afraid of the dark. Forgive us." Reilly helped him up and smiled. "There is nothing to forgive. We are all learning. And now, we must help others learn too." Adani stood beside him, holding the broken piece of a shadow charm. She raised it high. This is what fear did to us. It made us hurt each other. It made us blind. But now, we choose peace. We choose light. The villagers clapped and cheered. It was a new beginning. In the days that followed, the village was busy with activity. The people cleaned the streets, painted their homes, and repaired what the darkness had broken. Laughter returned to the market square. Drums played in the evenings again. Weddings and naming ceremonies filled the days with color and song. But they didn't forget what had happened. They built a shrine on the mountain path, not to worship the harbinger, but to remind them of the danger of hatred, of fear, and of ignoring the pain of others. The shrine had a message carved into stone. Let no one be unseen. Let no pain be ignored. Let love be our law. The people now told the full story. They told how a woman was sacrificed by mistake, how her pain turned into vengeance, and how that vengeance became a river of destruction. They told how God raised up young, fearless warriors, Rili and Adunni, and how they fought with courage and faith, not for power, but for peace. Schools began to teach the children not just how to count or write, but how to care, how to listen, how to forgive. They taught about the strength of prayer, the power of unity, and the danger of silence when someone is suffering. One day, Rili and Adunni walked alone through the quiet part of the village. They reached the river where the woman had once drawn water. It was calm now, flowing gently under the trees. Adunni sat down and said softly, "Do you think she's at peace now?" Rili nodded. "I believe so. In the end, she saw the light again. And I believe God welcomed her." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of the water and birds above. "We've seen a lot," Rili said. "But now we have hope." Adunni looked up at him. "And that's stronger than any curse." That year, when the time for the Forbidden Midnight Festival came again, the people did something different. They didn't hide. Instead, they came together in the village square, holding candles and singing songs of thanksgiving. There were no sacrifices, no fear, no shadows. They renamed the day. It was no longer the festival of silence. It became the night of light. Every year after that, they gathered at midnight not to tremble, but to celebrate survival, healing, and the power of forgiveness. Even the neighboring villages heard about it. They came to join. Soon, what once was a night of terror became the biggest festival of peace in all of Yoruba land. After the victory over the Harbinger and her army of darkness, everything in Yoruba land began to change. It wasn't just the people who felt the difference. It was the land itself. For many years, the soil had been dry. Rain had been scarce. Farmers would plant but harvest almost nothing. Trees had lost their leaves, and even animals had started leaving the forests. But now it was different. One morning, not long after the final battle, something wonderful happened. Rain fell from the sky. Not just any rain. This rain was gentle, warm, sweet-smelling. As it touched the ground, the earth seemed to drink it with joy. The dry soil became soft again. The rivers, once shallow and slow, began to rise and flow quickly. Water ran through the village like blessings from above. People came outside, lifted their hands to the sky, and laughed. Some cried. Even the elders said they hadn't seen rain like that in many, many years. "It is the rain of peace," one old woman said. "The heavens are smiling." In the days that followed, green returned to the land. Grasses grew tall. Banana trees bore fruit again. Cassava farms came back to life. Yams grew big and strong under the soil. Cows, goats, and chickens seemed healthier. They no longer refused to eat, and they stopped acting strange like they used to during the time of darkness. It was like the land had been holding its breath for years. And now it could finally breathe again. The villagers knew that this was more than just nature. It was spiritual. They could feel it. Many families gathered together to pray. They thanked God for His mercy. They held special praise nights, where people sang and danced all night long, not out of fear, but out of joy. Children who had been sick began to get better. A little girl named Tenny, who had not spoken a word for 2 years, suddenly started to sing. Her voice was beautiful, full of light. The villagers said it was the voice of healing. People also began to return to the lands they had abandoned. Farmers who had run away because of fear and hunger came back to their old homes. Broken houses were rebuilt. Abandoned farms were cleared and planted again. Young men who once wanted to run to the city to escape suffering now wanted to stay and grow their homeland. The land was no longer cursed. It was blessed. But the most surprising change happened in the spirit world. The forest spirits who had once hidden, afraid of the darkness brought by the harbinger, slowly began to return. Hunters and herbalists began to see signs. Small footprints in the forest. Gentle winds that spoke in whispers. Flowers blooming in the middle of dry paths. One old hunter, Baba Ji Bade, told a story. He said that as he walked through the forest, a small bird with golden feathers landed on his shoulder. The bird spoke in a human voice and said, "Thank your people. The forest is happy again." After that, the hunter told everyone, even the spirits are celebrating. One evening, Really stood on the edge of the river, looking at the land that was healing. He felt peace in his heart. A dunny came to stand beside him. "We've been through so much," she said. "Yes," Really replied. "But look how far we've come." She looked at the green land, the flowing water, and the smiling people. "It was all worth it." Really nodded. "We faced fear with faith. And now, the land itself is dancing." They held hands and watched the sun set, its orange and gold light shining over after the victory over the Harbinger and her army of darkness. Everything in Yoruba land began to change. It wasn't just the people who felt the difference. It was the land itself. For many years, the soil had been dry. Rain had been scarce. Farmers would plant but harvest almost nothing. Trees had lost their leaves, and even animals had started leaving the forests. But now it was different. One morning, not long after the final battle, something wonderful happened. Rain fell from the sky. Not just any rain. This rain was gentle, warm, sweet-smelling. As it touched the ground, the earth seemed to drink it with joy. The dry soil became soft again. The rivers, once shallow and slow, began to rise and flow quickly. Water ran through the village like blessings from above. People came outside, lifted their hands to the sky, and laughed. Some cried. Even the elders said they hadn't seen rain like that in many, many years. "It is the rain of peace," one old woman said. "The heavens are smiling." In the days that followed, green returned to the land. Grasses grew tall. Be the village. That night, in the village square, there was a feast. Everyone brought something. Roasted yams, fried fish, boiled plantains, palm wine and sweet fruits. Drummers played while dancers moved their bodies in joy. Even the elders stood up to dance slowly, laughing as they did. Children ran with flower crowns on their heads, pretending to be kings and queens. It wasn't just a celebration. It was a new beginning. A new Yoruba land. Free from fear. Full of hope. Peace had returned to the land. The air was calm, the waters were clear, and the hearts of the people were finally at rest. But even as life became sweet again, the villagers knew one truth. They must never forget what had happened. Because forgetting could lead to repeating the same mistakes. And so, the elders called for a special gathering. The biggest one since the end of the battle. They gathered under the giant Iroko tree in the village square, a place where, for generations, important words had been spoken. This time, it was not just for celebration. It was for memory. The entire village came. Mothers, fathers, old men and women, hunters, traders, and most importantly, the children. They sat on mats made of raffia, eyes wide, ears open, hearts ready. The king stood and raised his staff. He said, "My people, the dark days have passed. But the story of those days must live forever. We must teach our children, and our children's children, so that the light we fought for will never be lost." He turned to the griots, the village storytellers. These were men and women gifted with powerful voices and deep memories. They were trained to pass history from mouth to mouth, heart to heart. One griot named Baba Alayo stepped forward. He was a slim old man with gray hair tied into a bun and a long walking stick. But when he began to speak, his voice became strong, like the beating of a drum. "Let me tell you a story," Baba Alayo began. "A story of a woman whose cry shook the skies." He told them everything, how the forbidden festival used to bring fear. How a poor old woman returning from the market had become a sacrifice. How pain turned her into a monster. How the land began to rot and die. How the harbinger and her spirits ruled the night. And then, he told of the young boy, really, and the brave girl, Adunni. How they were chosen by God. How they walked into the darkness with faith and fire. How they battled shadows, climbed mountains, and called down heaven's power. He described the final battle in such a way that even the birds in the trees stopped to listen. He waved his staff and mimicked the cries, the fire, and the power of the children of God. The children clapped. The elders nodded. He ended with a simple but deep statement. When a land forgets its past, darkness waits in the shadows. But when it remembers, light will never die. From that day, storytelling became part of life in Yoruba land. In schools, children were taught not just to read and write, but to understand the power of kindness, truth, and courage. Teachers spoke of the danger of silence and the importance of standing up for what is right. In the evenings, families sat outside their homes. Around cooking fires, grandmothers told stories of the harbinger, of Rili and Adunni, and of how God fought for his people. The stars above became the listeners, and the winds carried the words from village to village. Even festivals changed. During the night of light, after dancing and singing, the children would sit in a large circle. Each one took turns retelling a part of the story. Some told it with music. Some drew it in the sand. Some acted it with masks and cloths. It wasn't just history anymore. It had become culture. Rili and Adunni were invited to these gatherings often. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they just watched with smiles on their faces. Seeing young boys and girls acting out the scenes of the battle, seeing them hold wooden swords and shout, "Let there be light," filled their hearts with peace. "We are no longer alone in this story," Rili once said. Adunni replied, "And as long as these children remember, the darkness can never return." One quiet night, Rili visited the old tree by the river again. He carved something into the bark with his knife. Just 6 simple words. "Let this story always be told." He knew that when he was old, when his hands were weak and his voice tired, someone else, maybe a child who hadn't even been born yet, would continue the story. Because stories like this must never die. After many moons of peace in Yoruba land, the people were stronger, happier, and full of life again. Every evening, laughter filled the air. The trees danced with the wind. The rivers sang as they flowed through the village. But deep inside Rili and Adunni, something new was growing. A stirring. A calling. They could not ignore it. Even though their village was safe now, they started hearing whispers not from spirits, but from travelers and messengers who passed through their land. Some of them spoke of other villages far away, places still trapped in fear. Places where the night was filled with strange cries. Where crops still refused to grow. Where people had not yet heard the story of the harbinger's defeat or the power of God's light. Rili and Adunni began to ask themselves questions. What if other lands are still suffering? What if the darkness fled, but only hid in other places? What if the battle is not over, just moved? One morning, Rili stood at the edge of the village, looking at the tall hills in the distance. Adunni joined him, carrying a small bag filled with supplies. She didn't say a word. Neither did Rili. But they both knew, it was time. Time to go. Time to take the light that had saved their village and carry it to places where the sun had not yet risen. The king and elders blessed them with prayers. The people gathered in the square, just like they had on the day of the final battle. But this time, there was no fear in their eyes. Only pride and hope. "You go with our love," said the king. "And with the light of heaven," said Baba Alayo the storyteller. A young girl ran up to Adunni and placed a small charm in her hand, a carved wooden sun. "For when the clouds are too thick," the girl whispered. Rili and Adunni smiled, hugged the villagers one by one, and began their journey. Their path took them through forests they had never seen before. Across rivers that had no bridges. Over mountains so high, their breath became short and cold. In some places, they slept under trees. In others, kind strangers welcomed them. They met people who had never heard of the harbinger. And others who had heard whispers, twisted and wrong versions of the story. They corrected these lies with truth, told the story with passion, and prayed with those who still feared the night. And wherever they went, something strange and beautiful happened. The land responded. In one village, they arrived during a long drought. After they spoke and prayed, rain fell for the first time in 3 years. In another place, the people had not smiled in months. But when Really played his small talking drum, laughter returned like an old friend. In a town ruled by a wicked chief who kept women inside at night, a Dunny told her story, how her strength and courage had helped defeat darkness. The women wept. The men were humbled. And the chief stepped down days later. It was clear. The light was not just a story. It was a seed. And Really and a Dunny were planting it in every heart they met. They didn't stay long in one place. Their journey was not about staying. It was about spreading. About awakening. They left behind songs, prayers, smiles, and stories. And in each village, they lit a small lantern. A symbol. The darkness may visit again, Really told one boy, but now you have your own fire to fight it. One night, as they walked alone under a sky full of stars. After many moons of peace in Yoruba land, the people were stronger, happier, and full of life again. Every evening, laughter filled the air. The trees danced with the wind. The rivers sang as they flowed through the village. But deep inside Really and a Dunny, something new was growing. A stirring. A calling. They could not ignore it. Even though their village was safe now, they started hearing whispers not from spirits, but from travelers and messengers who passed through their land. Some of them spoke of other villages far away, places still trapped in fear. Places where the night was filled with strange cries. Where crops still refused to grow. Where people had not yet heard the story of the Harbinger's defeat or the power of God's light. Really and a Dunny began to ask themselves questions. What if other lands are still suffering? What if the darkness fled, but only hid in other places? What if the battle is not over, just moved? One morning, Really stood at the edge of the village, looking at the tall hills in the distance. A Dunny joined him, carrying a small bag filled with supplies. She didn't say a word. Neither did Really. But they both. A Dunny asked, "Do you think we'll ever go home?" Really looked up, thoughtful. Maybe. Or maybe this is home now, wherever people need the light. She nodded, slowly. Then let's keep walking, until the whole land sings again. And so they walked, hill to hill, village to village, planting stories, sparking faith, calling forth light from places where it had been forgotten. They were no longer just heroes of Yoruba land. They were messengers of hope to the whole world. Really and a Dunny had walked through many lands. They had seen tears turn to smiles, fear turn to laughter, and darkness flee before the light. But nothing had prepared them for this village. They arrived just before sunset. The sky was painted with orange and purple, but the village was quiet, too quiet. No dogs barking, no children playing, no mothers calling their children home. Even the birds in the trees were silent. It felt like the whole village was holding its breath. At the entrance, they met an old man sweeping the dusty ground. He didn't look up, didn't speak, just kept sweeping like a man lost in his thoughts. "Good evening, Baba," Really said gently. The man paused, looked at them with tired eyes, and whispered, "You should go. This place has forgotten how to sing." A Dunny stepped closer. "What do you mean, Baba?" He pointed to the heart of the village. "Go and see. But don't let the silence take you too." They walked deeper into the village. The houses were standing, but many looked abandoned. Shops were open, but no one was selling or buying. People sat outside, but no one greeted them. They just stared, empty eyes, heavy hearts, lips sealed shut. Even the air felt heavy. It was like a blanket of sorrow had been thrown over the whole place. "What happened here?" a Dunny whispered. "I don't know," Really replied. "But we were sent for this." They found the village square. At the center stood a broken well. Beside it, a statue, a woman covering her mouth with her hands. A sign below read, "We do not speak of the night." Really and a Dunny looked at each other. They could feel it. Something terrible had happened here. And the people had chosen to bury it. To silence it. To forget it. But in forgetting, they had also lost joy. Hope. Their song. That night, Really took out his talking drum. He tapped it softly. The sound echoed through the empty village. No one came. No one responded. Adani lit a small fire and began to sing, a quiet, gentle song about hope and healing. Still, the people stayed in their homes. But one child peeked from a window. Then another sat quietly near the fire. By midnight, a small group had gathered, silently watching. Adani stood and spoke. My name is Adani. This is really. We come from a land that once suffered. We saw darkness rise. We saw fear grow. But we also saw the power of truth and light. She walked slowly in a circle. I know something happened here. Something that took your voices, your songs, your smiles. But silence is not the answer. Hiding pain only gives it power. She paused, looked into the fire. We came to remind you, you still have a voice. And that voice can break chains. A woman began to cry softly. A man clenched his fists. A child clapped once. Then twice. Then the talking drum began again, louder this time. Reilly's fingers danced on the leather. Adani began to sing, but this time, not alone. A young girl joined her. Then a boy. Then an old woman hummed along. And slowly, like sunrise breaking over a dark land, the village began to sing again. They sang songs of sorrow. Songs of healing. Songs of joy. They cried. They laughed. They danced barefoot in the dust. And for the first time in many years, birds returned to the trees and joined the singing. The silence was broken. The fear, defeated. Not by battle, but by truth. And songs. Before they left, the villagers rebuilt the statue in the square. But this time, the woman's hands were open and lifted high. A new sign read, We speak. We sing. We heal. Reilly and Adani stood at the edge of the village once more. Adani smiled. That's one more light. Reilly nodded. And many more to go. They turned and walked on. To the next place that needed hope. To the next soul that needed light. Because their journey would never truly end. As long as there was darkness to shine into. They would keep going. Reilly and Adani had walked through many lands. They had seen tears turn to smiles, fear turn to laughter, and darkness flee before the light. But nothing had prepared them for this village. They arrived just before sunset. The sky was painted with orange and purple, but the village was quiet, too quiet. No dogs barking. No children playing. No mothers calling their children home. Even the birds in the trees were silent. It felt like the whole village was holding its breath. At the entrance, they met an old man sweeping the dusty ground. He didn't look up, didn't speak, just kept sweeping like a man lost in his thoughts. Good evening, Baba, Reilly said gently. The man paused, looked at them with tired eyes, and whispered, You should go. This place has forgotten how to sing. Adani stepped closer. What do you mean, Baba? He pointed to the heart of the village. Go and see. But don't let the silence take you too. They walked deeper into the village. The houses were standing, but many looked abandoned. Shops were open, but no one was selling or buying. People sat outside, but no one greeted them. They just stared, empty eyes, heavy hearts, lips sealed shut. Even the air felt heavy. It was like a blanket of sorrow had been thrown over the whole place. What happened here? Adani whispered. I don't know, Reilly replied. But we were sent for this. They found the village square. At the center stood a broken well. Beside it, a statue, a woman covering her mouth with her hands. A sign below read, We do not speak of the night. Reilly and Adani looked at each other. They could feel it. Something terrible had happened here. And the people had chosen to bury it. To silence it. To forget it. But in forgetting, they had also lost joy. Hope. Their song. That night, Reilly took out his talking drum. He tapped it softly. The sound echoed through the empty village. No one came. No one responded. Adani lit a small fire and began to sing, a quiet, gentle song about hope and healing. Still, the people stayed in their homes. But one child peeked from a window. Then another sat quietly near the fire. By midnight, a small group had gathered, silently watching. Adani stood and spoke. My name is Adani. This is Reilly. We come from a land that once suffered. We saw darkness rise. We saw fear grow. But we also saw the power of truth and light. She walked slowly in a circle. I know something happened here. Something that took your voices, your songs, your smiles. But silence is not the answer. Hiding pain only gives it power. She paused, looked into the fire. We came to remind you, you still have a voice. And that voice can break chains. A woman began to cry softly. A man clenched his fists. A child clapped once. Then twice. Then the talking drum began again, louder this time. Reilly's fingers danced on the leather. A dunny began to sing, but this time, not alone. A young girl joined her. Then a boy. Then an old woman hummed along. And slowly, like sunrise breaking over a dark land, the village began to sing again. They sang songs of sorrow. Songs of healing. Songs of joy. They cried. They laughed. They danced barefoot in the dust. And for the first time in many years, birds returned to the trees and joined the singing. The silence was broken. The fear, defeated. Not by battle, but by truth. And songs. Before they left, the villagers rebuilt the statue in the square. But this time, the woman's hands were open and lifted high. A new sign read, "We speak. We sing. We heal." Reilly and Adunny stood at the edge of the village once more. Adunny smiled. That's one more light. Reilly nodded. And many more to go. They turned and walked on. To the next place that needed hope. To the next soul that needed light. Because their journey would never truly end. As long as there was darkness to shine into. They would keep going. And so, the land that once cried in darkness began to shine again. The witch who rose from pain and vengeance was defeated, not by weapons, but by faith, unity, and the power of God. Families returned to their homes. Children laughed once more. The fear of midnight was broken. Reilly and Adunny did not return to a life of comfort. They chose to keep walking, carrying their light to other villages still trapped in fear. Because they knew something important. Evil wins when good people stay silent. But when the children of God rise up, even the darkest night must bow to the morning sun. This is more than just a story. It is a reminder that light will always overcome darkness. That courage lives in the hearts of those who dare to believe. And that no curse is too strong when God is involved. The Midnight Festival may still be a memory, but its curse, broken forever. The end. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales of hope, courage, and light. Until next time, remember, no darkness is too strong when you walk with faith. See you in the next story. Bye.